All right, all right. I want to welcome everyone to episode number 3 of season 2. We are getting going, and I'm super excited about this episode that we have coming up today. I watched this young man. We've actually went to college together, and so kind of reconnected recently. And during all of the uproar and turmoil that's been going on in the country, he started dropping these heavy, heavy, heavy stories about just Black history in America. And it was I didn't know how I was supposed to feel, right? He was just dropping them educational wise, but they really just showed some of the brutality, et cetera. And I just said, hey, I got to get him on this podcast to see just what his inspiration was, what kind of drove him to drop this information. And for all of our listeners, we're going to definitely share that with you as well, so you can take a look at some of those things. So with that being said, I want to welcome James Morris to the show. How you doing today, brother?
Man, I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm excited, man. I'm excited. I told you when we were in the studio before we went live, I got the young French bulldog back here. So he may want to speak up or he may want to comment while we're having our conversation tonight. He's all about black empowerment. So he's a black dog. He's all black dog. So he may have some comments as well, man. But why don't you introduce yourself to my audience and kind of talk about and tell us a little bit about you?
I'm James Morris. I'm an economist, dabble in real estate, and new author. Just wrote first children book, so I have that on Amazon. So I'm just a person, multi-talented person that just started making posts for educational purposes, and that was definitely something I just wanted to get out there to Facebook and Instagram.
So let's dive into it, man. Let's dive into it because when I was once I first started to see these, I think I'd already started the podcast, and I knew I wanted to get you in. And unfortunately, it's not fortunately, but unfortunately, I'm going through season 1. I have everything kind of all 10 episodes already booked out, and I'm like, man, it would have been great to have him at this time with everything going on. And lo and behold, we back at it again. Right, same situation. What drove you? You talked about the educational piece, but this recent series, and I don't know if you have a title for it, et cetera, but what drove you to start to drop those? Was it what was going on? Was this something you've always done? And I just end of it, kind of talk about that a little bit.
So I started them in February, and I would just do typical Black history, African American contributions to America. And then after the George Floyd incident and people weren't understanding the looting or understanding the rioting, I said, man, I may not agree with it, but I understand it. And at that point, it was my opportunity to say, now let me help you understand what we learned rioting and looting from. So I took it back to the 1800s to say, America basically broke the promise. Our 40 acres and a mule, I started at that point. The emancipation of slavery, we were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. And we received some of the acreage, but then they took it back because it belonged to the Confederates, so it wasn't even theirs to give. So then I kind of took it to, all right, we sympathize, very sympathetic people forgiving people, African Americans. We forgave you for that. We're going to build our own communities. And we built schools, and we built churches, and we had our own businesses and our banks, and we had a city. But then once we began to build that power, what do? You burn it down.
Right.
So I kind of took them through that whole oppression, because you're here like, why are you tearing up your neighborhoods?
Right.
And really much in our neighborhoods. I can drive through my neighborhood, the same liquor stores on the corner, funeral home that kind of flip hands a couple of times. It's a daycare center. There's nothing there.
Right.
So when we talk about, ways of oppression, now you're talking about education. We don't have the right education. You're talking about access to health care. You're talking about access to housing. You're talking so many things to where a person, they just don't have any hope. And that's what I kind of wanted to show in the post. And
Mm.
I wanted to kind of grab you in with one, like, let me show you a picture. Let's kind of relive it. Now, let me give you the history behind it. And then you tell me how that makes you feel.
Wow. Wow. You actually started into the next question that I was going to ask because, social media definitely has its negatives. And I can say that prior to really social media, I was to probably everyone, right, to themselves and their small circle of friends, but you get to see so many other people's opinions and thoughts, right, with these vehicles. And obviously looting is one that I felt like I don't even know if we're 50-50 on. Hear a lot of people condemning it, and then you'll hear some people talk to why it is.
Right.
But a lot of times when I hear people condemning it, and I'm one that, of course, I'm not like loot, but
Right.
I honestly don't care if you go into Michigan Avenue and take Fendi. Like it's misguided, but I'm definitely not going to get upset. Like it's because I think sometimes people feel like it's making us look bad, like looking bad to who. Even that mindset is kind of to me, a warped mindset. So where do you fall on that? Which side of the fence do you fall on? You understand it and why it is, and looking back through history as someone who's deep off in the education. But give me your thoughts about kind of the rioting and looting.
So with the looting, I'll say I was on a conference call for Rogers Park, and it's business owners, it's landlords. And one of the guys on there mentioned, hey, you know what? We arrested 7 other looters. None of them were from the neighborhood. None of them were from Illinois. Essentially, they came in with a U-Haul truck, burst through this bar that was in Rogers Park, went in with kind of like wheelbarrows and stole all the TVs, hauled out all the beer, was in and out 5 minutes.
Mm,
So those are planned attacks, which those are just opportunities.
right,
For looting, I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to say it's our people in those neighborhoods that are looting and burning down their hoods. They're not doing that.
right,
No. But I will say, if it was our people, we learned it from our oppressors. We burned down our neighborhoods.
right,
So when you don't agree with something, just like if we go talk about education, you trying to understand the mindset of a person in the hood, but you made it illegal to even educate a person, talking about from the 1800s.
yep,
You essentially had a law that said no white person can educate a black person in a classroom. And at the same time, no black person can educate a white person's child. However, you have them taking care of your white children. You have them working in the home. You made it illegal for us to learn how to read and write. And then if you don't have a great education in a neighborhood, then what do you expect the
right,
people to do?
right,
You write a crime bill like the 1993 crime bill, the three strikes law, and then once a person gets a felony on his record, he loses access to financial aid. You're going to discriminate against that person if they try to get a job. You're going to discriminate against that person if they try to get housing. You essentially are breeding criminals. You want
facts,
criminals.
facts, facts. So what do you think about because I also think that there's, I mean, we met each other at college, right, at one of the best colleges in America. And so I think that um, it's easy for us to get disconnected,
Right.
right? And not understand that plight. I was texting back and forth with one of my guys the other day, and I said, I hear everything you said, but you talking to me as a 20-year corporate dude, a college educated dude, a mom who cared about you. Like I get your story,
Right.
but it's difficult for me to kind of condemn the stories of and the realities of others, right? In terms of their mindset, how do you respond to folks that may say, "I hear you, James, but that's the past, right? That all happened. You're telling me about stuff that happened in the 1800s. This 2020, bro. Like
Right.
they got a chance to do X. They should be
Right.
doing Y. They should be taking advantage of opportunities." How do you respond to that, and how do you tie both together?
So then there's this experiment. It's called the cherry blossom experiment. And there's this scientist, and he takes male mice and he puts them in a container and he turns on electric current, and the mice are bouncing around, bouncing around. So every time he turns on that electric current, he'll spray a cherry blossom scent. So then the mice are begin to associate the scent with current. He takes those male mice out and he breeds them with female mice. And those female mice, they have baby mice. And he put the new baby mice in a container and he sprays cherry blossom, the scent, and the mice are jumping around as if it's current there. So that's telling you it's in your DNA. So therefore, what in my head is when you see a person being lynched and you don't react to that, you just gaze and you don't respond to it. That speaks something to your mindset.
Right.
However, I have a great relative who every time she saw a white person, she would pee on herself.
Wow.
Because she saw her nephew hung from a tree. And at that time, what they did was the next day, all the neighbors cut down every tree because they didn't know if those white people were going to come back. And if they did come back, they didn't have any trees to hang them on. So what I'm saying is, it's in my DNA. So if you think about, you hear people say the angry black man syndrome.
Yeah.
We tired. We fed up. So yeah, when we speak with conviction and we are angry. So don't tell me that because it happened in the past, it's not having an impact on my life now. It is.
That's deep. That's deep, bro. That's deep. So let's so before we jump into these stories, and I often think about this myself as well, is there you know, I listen to cats like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Reza Islam and just you know, obviously what the nation and separation. Do you think that it's really possible? Like right now, this is, I don't think I've ever been alive at a time where it seems like it's potentially a tipping point, right? But I don't know what it really will tip to. Like there's a lot to be lost. There's a lot of people that gain from the current condition, and then they're the power people. And so for you, do you believe that do you believe that America can change, that America can really become this land of whatever for black people?
Nah, I don't really think so. It's too much money tied up in America for a person to say, you know what, I'm going to shut down the private prisons. You know, and if you shut down the private prisons, then you have to tackle the judges that are feeding prisoners.
Sure.
And then you have the public defenders who are overworked, but they get paid to convict. You know, and then we do know that we have police officers who were born during a time people were getting lynched and killed, and it was easy for them to become police officers.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a person, sometimes you wonder, like, man, where did the KKK members go? Like, are they infiltrating the police?
Absolutely.
Are they in corporate America, so they're going to hire us?
Yeah.
Are they in the banks? So when I'm doing my loan application, man, I don't never reveal who I am. I don't never say I'm African American. And then when I selected the names for my children, you can be in touch with yourself, but I made sure we purposely named the kids so when you look at it on the resume, you can't tell if they black. Give them a very prestigious name. Because we know the discrimination starts at the resume. So these people out here naming the kids with all the hyphens and the quishas and things like that.
Yeah.
Jobs.
Yeah. It better be entrepreneurs, huh?
Right, you know, you better figure it out, but y'all not thinking like that.
Right.
You know, so that's what some people don't understand is it starts all the way when the baby come into the world. That I'm already thinking about this conversation that we're going to have, to where I'm going to have to tell you how to handle yourself if you encounter a racist person, a police officer, you feel like you're not being treated well at the job. it's a lifelong, plan for me.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's funny, bro, because we've never had that conversation, but you're spot on. It's exactly how I feel. I say, well, where are the kids? They got jobs.
Right.
Where do they work? So that
Right.
means they're in all facets and fabrics of America, and that's why sometimes when we feel so secure at our jobs, I'm like, do you think they're not in corporate America? Like they're everywhere.
They
They're
ever.
everywhere, and they have different powers in
Mhm.
those different places that they exist. And so let's jump into some of the stories. And for our listeners, again, we appreciate you guys joining us each and every week. And remind you to go back to the podcast. We finished up 10 amazing episodes in season 1. This is the 3rd episode of season 2. So you can find us on Apple, you can find us on Spotify, coming soon with the YouTube page. And please feel free to tag some folks, because we haven't even gotten into it yet. This is just the appetizer that we're doing, because we're going to jump into some of these Black American stories. And so let's start there. Give me one that touched you in a way. One of your stories that you shared. Kind of just give the audience a high level overview of kind of what happened, and why specifically you chose to share that one, because you have over 100 posts.
Right.
That I know that if you want to dive into this, brother, that it's great. It's great food. Unfortunate food, but really good food when you're trying to educate yourself. So, which one that you want to share with us?
Man, I start in order. The one that when I did the Philadelphia bombing, the move, that was the one that got shared like over 35,000 times.
Mm.
I had people in my inbox like, hey, you may want to update it from 1985 to 1885. And I said, no, the date was correct. It was 1985.
Right.
However you felt about the individuals in the move, let's try to understand why they were so passionate about that and willing to lose their life and the sacrifices they made.
Mm.
And let's not change the narrative, because we changed the narrative a lot. And regardless of how you felt about them, and you drop a bomb on a property in the middle of the neighborhood, even if you're trying to destroy that, you let the entire neighborhood burn down. It's not, so now you don't even rebuild. You're not even reimbursing them, because of what? Because that was a low income neighborhood. And then even today, like no, yesterday when I posted about Uncle Tom, it's just like, man, let's get it correct. Like, let's talk about Uncle Tom and the real Uncle Tom and his legacy. And let's not let white America change the narrative. And that's what happens a lot of times. When we have something positive, then they flip the narrative on us and they criminalize it. Even what they'll put us at war, you have light skin versus the dark skin. Well, that goes back to slavery. When the light skinned people would work inside the house and the dark skinned would work in the field. You travel to the Dominican Republic, it's happening there. The dark skinned Dominican Republicans are not taken as well as the light skinned. You go to the resorts, you're never going to see a dark skinned Dominican Republic there. So it for us it's the color. And we do it as Black people. If you went to a HBCU, oh man, that HBCU education ain't nothing. I went to a private white institution, but we have some great, profound HBCUs, and there's people that come out of there that are very successful entrepreneurs. However, when you're applying for a job, the majority of the time, it's going to be a white person that went to a PWI, private white institution, and they're going to overlook the HBCU because they look at it as it being inferior, because they don't understand HBCUs. The same thing, like they don't understand our history. So that's how the post began, was let me help you with your lack of knowledge so that you can at least understand why we move the way we do, why we do the things we do.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't, it was one you just posted the other day. I mean, so many of them, man, bring up so many thoughts, and the brutality of them are outside of the education. Was there any sort of, did you have any sort of agenda? Um, right. And I'll tell you why I'm going that direction. So you know that I'm in financial literacy and credit restoration. Right. And so a lot of the posts that I make are targeted at people, and sometimes to get emotion out of you. Right. So for an example, there's a cost to credit restoration. And so many times I'll get folks that will, oh man, it costs this, it's cost. Brother, you paying now.
Right.
And I definitely believe that. That 534, you're paying for it. Right. When I talk about your interest rate on your car note, when I talk about your car insurance, you are paying now, but it's a mindset shift that folks need to make. And so what was your agenda, or what were there any agendas outside of the education that you kind of wanted to push as well as you started to educate our folks and educate folks in general?
There was no plan for that. I may do like some generational wealth posts, and it's a plan there, and it's more to empower people. So even with the Black history, it's to empower you, because growing up, we in school, every time Black History Month, write a book report. Everybody select Dr. King. That's all we do.
Right.
So we didn't even know about the great contributions that other African Americans have made to this world and built America.
Mm.
When you talk about slaves building the White House, and you talking about slaves who, created like the first refrigerated truck. So in February, I'm going to say, you know what? When you sit down with your kids, pick one of these people to write about. Dr. King wasn't the only successful story. And do your research. Like, it's a stimulus against the Black Panthers. But the Black Panthers were the ones in Chicago who started the breakfast program and were feeding people. So don't tell me that they criminals, if you don't understand. But if you look at every meme and then you take that to be factual, that's why we're in this situation today, because everything on Facebook, you don't fact check. So if you say something, I'm like, okay, let me do my research, and I'm going to go to a couple of sites, and then I'm going to put it out there. So anything I put out there, it's already fact checked. So if I have someone say, hey, where you get your data from? When I talk about the wealth gap, I anticipated that question. I get it from the census. I get it from Fact Finder. This is the query where you can pull it, run your numbers, and see what we in line. Because I know how much wealth was stolen from my family because we couldn't buy on the north side. I'm in real estate. And I'm looking like, man, why could we never buy any property? Asking my uncle, why y'all never buy no properties on the north side?
Yeah.
Oh, young buck, you don't know.
Right.
We weren't allowed on the north side.
Right.
Or if I be like, man, why we didn't go to this school? And then we tried that.
Yeah.
It's the integrated Stevenson middle school. She got bused there. She fought every day. That's why my sister is a fighter. Jesse Jackson and the police were escorting them to school, and they getting rocks thrown at them, and white people spitting and looting and burning. And okay, we sitting back, we learning from you guys.
Right.
So you taught us this. You taught us how to be angry. You taught us how to loot. We just reciprocating the anger. But now you want us to be peaceful. We try to be peaceful.
Yeah, indeed. Are you a familiar or a fan of Dr. Claude Anderson?
Yeah.
So for anybody checking out the podcast, please check that brother out. A lot of education. Just made me think about that when you talked about just really the extraction of wealth from Black people, right? And yeah, we didn't come over here with money, but when you get hundreds of years of free labor, right, you only need to, it's not nothing funny at all, but you only feed them Flaming Hots and Cheetos, like it's a really low cost sort of opportunity. I'm like, how do you not win, right? The least smartest person is still able to win when you just give it to them, when they have free labor, right? Access to free labor. You talked about the 1985 bombing. What are some other ones that kind of stood out to you along your storytelling journey?
Man, probably Tulsa. because we had our city and we said, all right, you broke your promise. You didn't give us what we were entitled to, and all we were asking for was equality, just the right to vote.
Yeah.
You know, we try to vote and you still are hanging us and still lynching us and still putting policies in place. So then you have the black codes. So the black codes is essentially going to be every time you try to move, we're going to penalize you. We're going to tell you you can't live here. We're going to say you can't hold that job. And you essentially have to produce papers just to move around, to work, to preach. You have to have the approval of a white person. So you're limiting everything we can do. And it goes back to today. That's why black people feel like so offended when a police officer says, show me your ID. You asking to show my papers.
Right.
I'm free to move.
Right.
I'm free to do whatever without producing anything. But you still judging me by the hue of my skin. That's gonna upset me.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this, because I think that obviously we live this duality for specifically those of us that work in corporate America, and we have our personal and private feelings. Do you, when you started sharing some of these stories, right, and some of this Black American history in America, did you have any pause about who else might see, or what's up with James, or he's trying to kick something off? Were those did you have any of those thoughts? Because obviously, those of us who work in corporate America, at times you censor yourself because you might have a friend or two that on your page, or you get access to your page. So how was your journey as far as that's concerned?
I wasn't concerned at all. I mean, I'm selective with who I'm friends with. And as long as I'm putting factual data out there and I'm not making it personal, because I think like if you make things personal, you lose some of your audience, because it's not about me.
Right.
It's
Right.
about ancestors. So I may slide a post in there about, hey, this is what we experience in our family, because I don't want people to say, man, you talking like you've experienced it. So I've experienced it. We're not talking that far. I mean,
Right.
78 was when my sister integrated Stevenson High School. I mentioned 1974, my uncle bought his first building, 3-unit building. And the building didn't appreciate it as it should, as on the north side. We talk about education where my mom and dad didn't go to college. My sister and I was the first in the family, in our family, to go to college. So give me 100 more years, man, it'd be nice to say, oh yeah, my grandparents went to college. No, my granddad on my mom's side had a 4th grade education. 6th grade education on my dad's side. My grandmother never worked, because at that time they would stay at home and take care of the children. So yeah, it would be nice to say, oh, we have PhDs in the family of one of 13. And then here's the reality. 13 kids. The youngest kid finally graduates from Jackson State University. My aunt graduates from Jackson State University, has 2 children. One gets a full ride to Harvard University,
Wow.
goes to USC in med school, finishes there and down in Atlanta at Emory doing his residency. His sister gets a full ride to Brown University, does a med school there. Now she's down in Nashville. So the access of education, you suppress us for so many years, but once we have access, are we going to take off? Because you just don't have the drive that we have. So if that makes a person feel uncomfortable, that's what I want. I want you to feel uncomfortable.
Right. Right. So you got 2 children, right?
3.
You got three, and you recently come out with a project that appears to be doing very well. Super proud to see you drop that. Kind of talk a little bit about that, and what inspired you to drop that book.
So I'm in the Rockford area. It's probably 1% African Americans out here. So we in a new school, And I look at the population; it's very low diversity. You have 1% Asian, Indian, Black, and my daughter, she's in a dual language program. So I walk in the classroom, I'm looking around because that's what we do. When we walk in a room, we look around.
Right.
And the majority of the time, we always gonna be the only Black person. So I'm like, okay, hey, where are the books that represent us? And look like when my daughter said, I want her to see a book that resembles her.
Mm.
Oh, y'all don't have any? Okay. I'm gonna give you some of my friends. I'm gonna do even better. I'm gonna write a book and I'm gonna use my kids' names and I'm gonna put it out there. So now when you go to school, you got your own book. So whenever they say they don't have a book, you pull out your book.
Right.
You want me to write a series of books? I'll write a series of books for you. So we won't never have this problem again.
Mm.
Free access to books. You know, and yes, empowering them like that just to let them know, hey, if we have a problem, Dad gonna fix it. Dad gonna speak up on it.
Mm.
Dad gonna leave generational wealth. We ain't gonna have those problems. If somebody ain't gonna hire you, we got the family business. We good.
I love it. So what's the title of the book?
Trip to the Building.
Trip to the Building. And tell me about Trip to the Building.
Man, so I'm in real estate, and you know, I posted a picture because I bought a building here, and I took the kids there, and I want them to understand what goes into making repairs and collecting rent and earning what's going to be soon to be yours, and it's going to be theirs because it's in the will, it's in the living trust.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to people, you know, you're talking about financial literacy. A lot of people are going to be like, I don't know what a will is. I just wrote it on a piece of paper and that's law. No,
right.
That's not how it works. You know, and then you're talking about equity. The majority of the millionaires have real estate in their portfolio.
Absolutely.
You know, so while you guys are out here driving the cars and looking fresh and investing in depreciating items.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
You know, you show me your portfolio, man, now we're talking a little something different. You show me your credit score, okay, now I can see what you're working with. But don't be fooled. The goal is not to have like a high credit score. Leverage the credit score.
Leverage the credit. Absolutely.
You know, if you're not leveraging it, then what you got a high credit score for?
Exactly.
You know, exactly. So I think that was more so the inspiration of that, and that's why I do those generational wealth posts. I do the Black History post and let them know that they're great.
Yep.
Kings and queens, you resilient. So don't let somebody beat you down. You want to talk history? We can talk history.
Right.
Talk about your history.
Yeah.
You know?
Facts. Yeah, you hit on something major. I think I shared something on my page maybe a couple months ago, but it was around kind of the three pillars, right? So participation in the stock market. I guess it was titled What Separates the Rich from the Poor, right? And the first was participation in the stock market, which a lot of us aren't, right? And so I've been educating myself on just kind of stock market, et cetera, which I started 20 years ago, right? My last episode that I had was with a good brother, Will Montez, shared and dropped a lot of knowledge. And so if you're interested in the stock market, be sure to check out episode 2 of season 2. It'll be coming to our platform soon. I'm a little bit behind on getting things posted, but one was participation in the stock market. Second was real estate, right, which you just hit on. And the third was ownership in small business, right? And so those were kind of the three things. So as you see our current state here in this country, and let's not maybe talk about, blacks as a whole, because that's a huge thing to bite off. But if somebody's listening to this and kind of tying in and being a history buff and then bring it to current day, what, in terms of wealth creation, what are some of those things that maybe parents, should start to focus on if they're not focusing on, but definitely want to be focused on so they can pass that information on to their kids? What would be that formula as you see it?
First thing, life insurance. You have to have a life insurance policy. And I'm not talking about a GoFundMe page. You can get life insurance for $20 a month. It'd be $500,000, $1 million policy.
Yep.
You already gave your child an advantage. But you give a person $1 million and you haven't taught them anything about financial literacy, they're going to blow it. So you have to tell them about budgets. and you have to tell them about credit, and you have to tell them about the power of real estate to where you can keep leveraging and keep acquiring assets, but you're not using your money, you're using the equity in the property.
Right.
It's like even with a credit, you get lines of credit to do things, do something productive with it.
Yep.
You know, so life insurance, a will, a living trust, because even in a living trust, you can I can still, even though I'm not here, I can kind of control what's happening. Yep. I can say at 18, I'm going to drop this amount of money for you. At 21, if you're doing what I asked of you, I'm going to drop this amount of money. I'm going to relinquish this property to you. But if you're not doing what I want, it says it right here in the will. Your dad said you don't get anything. You can't come back and ask me for anything more because I'm telling you, I've already gave you the blueprint. So I'm taking you here to show you how to run the business. This is going to be, I started in real estate in 2002. I bought my first property. So you think about it, a 30-year mortgage in 2032, it's paid off.
Yeah.
Now it cash flows. That's just cash that's just coming in. You don't have to pay anything but taxes and insurance.
Absolutely.
If I think that you're not going to be responsible, I'll set it up to where we continue to pay it from the trust. So you can't mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can say if you trade school, college, you better have a plan. And I'm telling them I'm preparing it for it because if I'm not here, I need to know that you understand the plan and you can execute it.
Facts.
Because I ain't gonna always be here.
Right.
But people don't want to talk about money most of the time because they don't have money.
Yeah.
They want to talk about everything else that I'm not impressed with, but it makes you look good, but you look like a fool. You know?
Right.
You know, but it starts with most of the time with the parents. You know, and we're losing it because people are having kids at a young age. And it's not the old where it's 2-parent household and people are overworked and they're tired. But you got people on here posting about the games and posting about the Netflix shows. I don't watch TV. Don't ask me about that. I'm not going to be the quote stats of the players. I don't do fantasy football. That's not my fantasy. That's not my reality.
Right.
But I've been on Realtor.com 4 times today, closing on a 2-unit tomorrow. Got an update from a contractor I'm about to meet on a 2-unit that he's working, and that's the wealth I'm talking about. So I know those numbers. You want to talk those numbers? We can talk those all day because that makes sense to me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's King talk, boy. It's interesting. You know, we hadn't connected since college, right? But my man, shout out to Jay Green Griller.
Oh yeah.
We would always say, yeah, I'm going out. You know, Jay. You know, I'm DJing something at the crib. Oh man, they living good. I'm like, oh word. He's like, y'all brothers need to connect. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? Y'all come from the same cloth. And so it's great to get to connect with you, brother, because you're talking every piece of the language that I talk, which is the reason that we added Droppin Knowledge podcast, right? I'm a true believer that just a lack of education and education in the right stuff.
Right.
Like in the right stuff. And you know, it's freedom, man. If you understand how to play the game, and it's out here. It's available for us now. You just have to you got to reprogram yourself right now. I often share that my mornings used to start with watching First Things First on FS1, and then I go to Skip Bayless and Shannon. and now what I do is I watch Squawk Talk, right, on CNBC. So I'm watching on what's going on in the business world and the stock market. And it's a quick shift. It's still TV, but I'm feeding my brain something else now versus those stats and stories that really at the end of the day, how important is that stuff? And so as we get ready to wrap, let's jump back into these stories. And for all the listeners, I promise that we'll get those stories out so you can check them out. He's done over 100 pieces. And so you will, and again, we haven't even touched kind of as you read through these stories, they are amazingly horrific. And they're tough to swallow. And I oftentimes say that it's when people say slavery, it really lightens it to me, right? Like we know it's bad, what have you. But when you leave out the details, right, that's just like saying, oh man, he had a really good game. But what does that mean? Did he score 30? Did he score 60? I need the details, and the details brings it all home. And those stories are detailed and graphic. So I want you to finish with the story, but tell me about doing the research. Did you start off looking for something specific or a specific story that you remember or heard, or how did you kind of select what you selected? Because although you had 100 posts, obviously there's probably hundreds of more posts that you could have shared. How did you do your research and decide what you were going to put into this album?
It may be a conversation. It may be something that come up. So if I think about my day, and you think of something egregious, and you'd be like, oh, that's not possible. You put African American behind it, and you'd be like, yo, like, oh, that was possible. So now let me start digging a little bit more, and we talk about massacres, and we talk about the riots, and anytime you want to know like why something happened, you have to try to put yourself in that person's shoes and understand their mindset. And let's talk about how we got there. So although America wants this looting and rioting to stop, you essentially are trying to not address the cancer. Cancer just don't go away by its own. Address the cancer first, and then this will stop. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about. So if I'm thinking about tomorrow, what am I gonna post? I probably would go back to maybe a riot, or maybe I'll probably even do like another lynching, just to say I'm talking about education, and we're talking about education. But let's kind of talk about why we weren't able to learn. Like, what was the fear? Or when Black people say, like, well, Black people can't be racist. People say, oh, yeah, they can. Black people can be racist. You can be racist. No. What I'm saying is we don't have the power to be racist.
Right.
We can be prejudiced.
Right.
But if you know the true definition of a racist, then you will say, yep, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You can't be racist. So now you're telling me I don't have power. How many Black CEOs are there? I'm not making those decisions.
Right.
Who's running the stock market? Where are the judges? Who's running the prison systems? Who's making the laws? Who's running the country?
Facts.
You want to say, oh yeah, we had a Black president. You made it. Okay, we still had the House and the Senate, and y'all could get on terms. So everything he wanted to do, you blocked him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have any power. Because it was your goal to see them fail. Just like it's some people to go to see Black people fail all the time. Primary reason, like, why no one knows what I own. Because I don't want to be judged, and I don't want another barrier here. But on a level playing field, you can't keep up with me. So when people say, man, when do you sleep? I don't sleep. Because if I told you when I sleep, you'll be trying to gain ground on me. I don't sleep.
That's
man,
right.
I see you post at 5 a.m. You up? Yep, I'm up. I see you post at midnight. I'm still working. So I think that's what I'm gonna probably do one of those posts tomorrow, or I may just do the journey to freedom. Let's talk about that. And why is it so difficult that in 2020 we still trying to ask for freedom? We still trying to understand why you're removing mailboxes and why you about to suppress our vote because the lines are going to be long. It ain't because we trying to do something crooked. They air it every year. Like people the polls close at 7 p.m. and they still in line at 10 and 11. You trying to discourage us from voting. Although we still don't have a candidate for us.
Right.
We still picking the lesser of two evils.
Absolutely.
So you still need to vote, but come on, like we so far behind. You're talking 400 years. Talk to us in 2420. And it may be a level playing field.
That's real. That's real, bro. So, man, we could have this conversation for another hour, bro. Like this.
That's why I told you it was too much. When you like 40 minutes, I'm just gonna see if we have. I'm gonna jump around a lot, but
yeah, it's a lot to unpack, bro. But you've shared some gems and some nuggets. So as we close out, give me one more of those stories that you felt would be good to share with the audience.
I would, probably say the war on drugs. the war on drugs, 1971. So you're thinking about COINTELPRO, and you're talking about the crack epidemic that the government dropped in California, and you hook people on crack. There's no funding for crack. There's no funding for rehabilitation, but we have an opioid crisis. And now we have funding because opioids are white. And it was crack, and we still got what we call hypes running through the neighborhood on this. There's no mental health there. We don't have hospitals in our neighborhoods. They're closing them down. So when you talk about the health problems, we don't trust doctors because of this Tuskegee experiment. So when this COVID vaccine come out, you're gonna have some black people like, oh, yeah, y'all go first. Like, I ain't taking that. But you feed us junk in the hood. We live unhealthy. We have health issues. We don't want to go to the doctor, or we don't have insurance, or we don't have access to a hospital. You're making us unhealthy on purpose, by design, but who's making the money? So that's probably another one. And I wondered, I think I did post on that one. Make sure I don't lose you.
Right.
My power.
Okay.
Yeah. But that, I think that was a post. I did that one. That was probably like some months ago. And the post were only supposed to go up to Juneteenth. And then I was like, I'm gonna go to July 3rd because all these patriots is walking around with these flag bikinis and hats. That's against the flag code. So let me try to disrupt your 4th of July. And then I kind of went a little bit further. I may go into Labor Day, but now it's like so many people looking for it. It may be 365 days of Black History Month, and I won't get to our contributions until February. I got that.
Absolutely. So, and you see, I keep coming up with questions. So
Right.
if you have, if you're a white person and you're listening to this, or you're seeing this, or you listen to the podcast down the road, obviously since, well, not obviously, but since the George Floyd tragedy took place, I got the folks at work calling, how are you doing? And how's things going on in Chicago? And what can I do? Right? What can I do? And I won't share my responses on how I respond to that. I just kind of turned down. They wanted me to be a part of some sort of committee to hire diversity. I'm like, man, I'm okay. Let's let the other folks. They can do what you guys are looking to do. It's just, can you still hear me? Can you still hear me, James?
All right, there we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So I was just saying, so if a white person's kind of taking a look at this and they're wondering how can I learn more? How can I help? What would you tell them? And actually, one of the things I was thinking about is, as I saw you sharing these stories, I'm like, I would love to capture this, capsule it, and say, read this. I don't want you to go read an academic. Start here. Right. So you can really understand the brutality of what your great grandfather did, because I know he's a hero in the family, but I need you to see kind of, because again, I think it's not in the history books. And so unless you go search for it, you really won't know the brutality. And so you really can't appreciate the foulness. And so how would you respond to that person that's looking to be a part of the solution?
I mean, I didn't even touch on that, the white America rewriting history books and removing information. But typically when I'm out, I'm wearing like a shirt that draws attention. And I had a lady, white lady, she said, hey, I'm reading White Fragility. Is that a good book? I said, it depends, how you're reading it. And then she wanted to know, like, what can I do? And I said, man, you need to probably have a conversation with your family and your friends, because we need allies. The only reason we are where we are today is because white people got upset and white people saw it. We've been screaming this when Kaepernick took a knee 4 years ago. We were talking about police brutality. And people, no, let's just blackball him.
Right.
That's that racist power that you can just blackball people. We don't have that power. But, so you just have to have the conversation. You can't be afraid. So that's why I got to hit share, because I'm hitting share, putting this information out because it's not for me. I may be helping someone else. So I've met great people from the post, As far as Texas, and I do my best to not judge people because one of my friends, he's in Texas, and he's a white guy. But when you look at his profile, he's got an AR-15, and I was like, oh man, here we go, Texas AR-15. But
Right.
we have like some of the greatest conversations, and we respect each other. We may not agree on everything, but we respect each other.
Mm.
You know, so for us, we just asking to hear our story, put some things in place, and you'll have a conversation. I may do a post about reparations, and it's not from the point of just give every black person $10,000. It's like go back and make up for what you promised us. Let's go put some nice parks in our neighborhood. I didn't see ice rinks until I moved out here. I'm like, yo, y'all skating like school ice skating,
Right.
golf course.
Right.
We weren't allowed to go to golf course. We played in the alley like invest. I'm
Sure.
growing up, and in my grammar school, one computer for the whole school. Even when I went to high school, they called it a computer technology program. We didn't really learn nothing about no programming.
Right.
So man, go build our schools, go build our neighborhoods, go give us jobs, and man, just give us an opportunity.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, we're gonna blow your mind once we get to see.
Absolutely. We do it every time. So
Yeah.
yeah, brother, I can't thank you enough. This has been super enjoyable. I apologize. I'm over our time, but man, really good information. Hopefully, if you're checking this out, feel free to share this. Feel free to tag some folks so they can go back and take a look at this. Again, we'll have this up on our podcast platforms within the next 72 hours or so. Be sure to come back to the YouTube page, and we are also going to make sure that we share these stories prior to jumping on the going live here. We also talked about potentially a project of bringing some of these stories to light in a very unique way. And so I'm going to talk with this brother and continue to see if we can maybe put that together, combining resources and reach, because I think that these stories need to be told. And this is the Black history that you need to come up with, because I always say that it's, I hear it in your voice, even if you haven't identified it. I always say that I keep a healthy kind of edge to me about just being a Black man in America, right? Like, and I'll never lose that edge, but I think that edge allows me to stay on point, right? I never really fall asleep or get too comfortable. Right. I understand that at the end of the day, it's whether it's mental warfare, whatever, it's always on. It's right. Always on at the end of the day. So thank you again, brother. I appreciate it. Again, we're going to share that album when you have those 100+ stories. And I know that you guys are going to be able to take a lot from it. So thanks again, Jay.
All right. Talk to you later, bro.